going on, Only Playbook fans? We are back. Another week is here. Another week closer to fantasy football and the regular season. So we have a great show for you today. Shovit is here with me, no Shishot today, and we are going to give you risers and fallers in our own ADPs, who we think players that are going lower than they should be or players that are going higher than they should be. How are you feeling, Shovit?
I'm feeling good, man. I'm just ready. I'm ready for the season to start. I'm ready to draft. I know some people may have already have drafted or they have drafts coming up, and I still have 2 weeks to go until then, but I'm just itching to just get my guys in. What about you?
No, I'm absolutely the same way. It feels like the more mock drafts I do, the more I keep switching back and forth between, okay, I'm going to go running back early, I'm going to go receiver early.
Yeah.
Because again, these mock drafts are so hard to gauge, simply because that's not how our draft is really going to go, right? So I'm trying to be very mindful of the fact that like these guys are probably not going to be available here. Who is realistically going to be available here that I can get? So it's interesting to have to play that game. But again, like you said, I'm just ready for the real thing to be here. So I know what my team is, who I'm going to be rooting for this season, and kind of just move forward from that sense. So
yeah, for sure.
A lot of rumblings with preseason. We're in the final weeks of preseason. So I know players are climbing, players are falling based on numerous things, right? So this is kind of what we want to touch on. And I will kick us off, Shovit. My number one player in my personal rankings that is absolutely rising is Terry McLaurin. It seems pretty straightforward, but his ADP and where he's being drafted is as if Terry McLaurin is still on the same Commanders team from last year or the year before where the quarterback sucked. Obviously, everybody understands that they have Jayden Daniels. Jayden Daniels' biggest skill set isn't that he's a scrambler. In college, his biggest skill set was he loves to throw the deep ball. He loves to throw the deep ball. Okay, so we finally have a quarterback for Terry McLaurin who can actually feature him as a wide receiver one. They also traded away Jahan Dotson in an already what I thought was pretty depleted wide receiver room. So that only leads me to believe that either they have other guys that are going to step in to fill Dotson's role, or they truly are going to be one of those teams that features their number one receiver like they should, right? So I think this is a very, very low risk, high reward. Everybody sleeps on Terry McLaurin because, again, he's just a really good receiver that doesn't perform in fantasy football. And I'm comparing it to somebody like DJ Moore for years. Really good receiver on a really bad team, continued to underproduce, finally got a good quarterback, finally got traded to a good situation, not even a great quarterback in Fields, just a better situation where he could be featured, and he automatically had a better year. And obviously this year he's going to have a true quarterback similar to Terry McLaurin. And he is going around players on sleeper like Christian Kirk, who could be a wide receiver 3 on his team. Keenan Allen, who's like 35 years old, is sharing targets with 2 other receivers. So it truly doesn't make sense for me why Terry McLaurin is going down here. Guys like George Pickens, even, I understand he's the wide receiver 1, but his quarterback is way more uncertain, in my opinion, than Jayden Daniels. So there's a floor for Terry McLaurin, in my opinion, that never existed before. And there is a ceiling that is truly untapped for the first time. So he's one of my biggest risers in my personal rankings.
Yeah, I think that's spot on, man. Like the Jahan Dotson trade absolutely gets some more target share, but I think the Commanders and Jayden Daniels also, you're seeing his passing abilities that you've already seen in college, but also displayed in preseason where he's making those long bombs. And so this whole offense, Jayden Daniels is a guy that's kind of in that same topic as Terry McLaurin, Scary Terry. He's rising up for me too, with the fact that you have guys like Jared Goff, Kirk Cousins, even Caleb Williams that's ahead of him. But I feel like the upside with Jayden Daniels is a little bit higher, and so just how he's been playing, and I feel like this offense is going to be gelling, or they'll be down and they'll find ways to score points and get garbage points. So all of that being said, I'm liking what I've seen from Scary Terry and also Jayden Daniels too. So okay, my first riser is going to be Tony Pollard, man. I think Tony Pollard, his issue last year was like he just didn't look explosive with the Dallas Cowboys. The offensive line in the running game was an issue. Here, new offense and Brian Callahan with the Tennessee Titans have a better offensive line. I just feel like there is a world where Tony Pollard can get back to what we saw when he was sharing carries with Zeke. And he's a guy that you're getting later in the rounds, and he's rising up for me because, and I could be wrong, right? And I could be wrong, and Tony Pollard or Tyjae Spears could be the guy, one of those two guys. But if I'm right with Tony Pollard, with the price where he's at, projected to be drafted late 9th, 10th round, I could really get a home run. And like I said, like his explosiveness, like how they use him in the passing game. So Tony Pollard is a riser for me this year.
Yeah, I think he's going under the radar quite a bit. This is a guy 2 years removed from being a league winner. I forget. I think I traded for Tony Pollard while Zeke was still carrying the load earlier in the season 2 years ago or so, and then second half he had that massive surge. People forget last year, it's so easy to live in the here and the now. And last year, the here and the now was Tony Pollard is underperforming. Why is he doing it? This man now is 2 full years removed from that fractured leg and that high ankle sprain, all of which happened at the same time. And I believe on the same leg. So you have to think about injuries and recovering different for different players, right? So he came back last year from a fractured leg and a high ankle sprain to the same leg, and he wasn't himself. He didn't look 100%. He didn't have that same burst, the change of pace that he came in every time Zeke would go out, and how much it felt like the offense would get a jolt. That just wasn't there. So now you're getting him an entire offseason to fully recover from that. Yes, I do absolutely. I feel like I'm in lockstep with you that he's being very, very undervalued. And worst case, he's getting a split with Tajay Spears, but game script, in my opinion, for Tennessee is going to be, they're going to be down quite often. So those dump offs to Pollard late in the game, late in the half, those catches, 3-4 catches that he was good for, I think he's still good for. So I do like the future for Tony Pollard as well, just being 2 full years removed from the injury.
Right.
My biggest faller, man, I hate to do this. If you're listening to the pod, I'm going to hate to do this. It's Zach Moss. It's Zach Moss simply because I have to react to what we know, and what we know is that Chase Brown is getting most of the first team reps. That's what has come out of training camp, right? And whether that is because they already know who Zach Moss is, he's been in the league for like 5 years. You know what you're going to get with him. Chase Brown still learning the ropes, wasn't really featured heavily last year or a year before with Joe Mixon. But this is a guy who senior year at Illinois handled a massive workload. So in college, he proved that he could handle a workload, bigger, faster, badder people in the NFL. So I don't know if that's going to be the same, but it's not to say that he's incapable of that. So the fact that the information coming out to us out of their training camp is that he is taking most of the first team reps, all we can do is take that information and be like, okay, well, if the Bengals are telling us he's taking first team reps, then he's probably their RB1 right now. So I think naturally because of that, I had to climb him up into my rankings. Zach Moss or Chase Brown climbs up. So Zach Moss naturally falls down. Now, I'm still shove it, to be honest with you, in a see it to believe it type situation, simply because there's no doubt in my mind that if Zach Moss doesn't get hurt, he is going to be a productive running back. That's just who he's been. But there's nothing that leads me to believe that Chase Brown, or nothing that's proven that Chase Brown is for sure going to be productive, right? He could get hurt. He could, just not see the holes well. He could not pass protect well. There's so much that we haven't seen from Chase Brown outside of electricity on a couple of touches, but we know that that's not what coaches want. That's not what gets you 3 downs worth of work in the NFL. It's really not. So I'm still in a see it to believe it situation, but because that's the news coming out, it would be stupid for me not to adjust my ADP.
First off, I watched the Bengals game, and I want to say shout out to Travion Williams. I thought he played really well. And the reason I want to say shout out to Travion Williams is because my brother met him at an airport. He has his number there in contacts. So Travion Williams, if you're listening to this, please jump on our
Come on the pod.
That would be great. But in terms of this Chase Brown situation, right? Yeah, he is a guy that's rising for me, and then intuitively Zach Moss is falling. There's a key down in the red zone that Joe Burrow was passing the ball to, I believe it was T. Higgins, and Chase Brown had an amazing block. He gave him just enough time to be able to get that throw off. And so that kind of shows like that they trust this guy in the red zone, right? To put him in there, not Zach Moss, a veteran. And so they're giving him the reps. The only thing about Chase Brown that I don't like, he's a pass catching running back. His vision is sometimes kind of like a little bit weird, right? Like he's not making the right reads on the holes. And I hope that as the season progresses, that will sort itself out. But yeah, he's a pass catching guy, has speed. So I really like his upside. And I'm with you, man. I had one of my risers was Chase Brown, and your faller is Zach Moss. So that kind of just goes hand to hand. So I'm going to give you guys a different faller. So that's outside of Zach Moss. My followers are going to be, there's 2, Pat Freiermuth and Jaylen Warren, right? Jaylen Warren, because he's a faller in terms of ADP right now. Now he in the sense that he got injured. and I believe it's an ankle injury. And so he
Mhm.
is going to be maybe out week 1, could be week 2. We saw Freiermuth out with a hamstring injury last year. He came in too early and had an even more longer recovery after he re-injured that hamstring. So I think that they're going to be careful with Jaylen Warren. That should bring down his value a little bit lower. Najee Harris in some ADP is our Najee Harris is set to be the guy that's drafted before Jaylen Warren right now. So you can use that to your advantage, right? If Jaylen Warren's not getting drafted as early, wait till Najee Harris gets drafted and then draft Jaylen Warren. I think his injury is a little bit concerning. And then Pat Freiermuth, man, he was my top 12 tight end guy. With the way the Steelers offense is looking, dude, it is so depressing. Like, this offense looks like JV out there. They're just not able to move the chains as they need to. Only 3 points against the Bills, backups. And so, it's just one of those things with this offense. I mean, outside of George Pickens and, the running game, who do you really count on? So I would say, if just try to stay away if possible from the Steelers offense.
Yeah, I mean, so yes, absolutely. The offense has been like the talk of preseason for their ineptitude, right? So not in a good way. And it's like you have two quarterbacks, one who had been proven at one point, one you're still waiting to prove himself, and neither of which seem to have won or, take a command over the starting job. It's almost like Wilson could be washed and they're giving Fields every opportunity to take the job, and he just kind of isn't. All of that to say, Shovit, I do think holistically, all of this props up both Najee and Jaylen Warren, because let's look at them last year. Different Matt Canada offense, right? Just atrocious. Like that doesn't even qualify for a competent offense. They just got Arthur Smith, who we were bitching about last year because all Arthur Smith wanted to do with the Falcons was run the football. We wanted more Bijan, and he just kept giving us Algier. He kept giving us Patterson, and he just kept running the football down everybody's throat. When they had Drake London, when they had Kyle Pitts, they had all the weapons, but they were like, no. And it's also because they had pretty inept quarterback play. Do you see a resemblance here? Arthur Smith is coming here. He's getting 2 pretty good running backs now. He has 2 bad quarterbacks, so no real quarterback. And you have a weapon in George Pickens that's kind of like Drake London, massive, wins 50-50 balls, but not a guy that on a snap-to-snap basis, you're like, hey, dude, run a quick hitch and get open. Like, you just don't have that. So don't you think they're going to probably lean heavier into the run? And I've been Najee's been climbing my boards, not even because of the Jaylen Warren injury, but because I know how much they love to feature Jaylen for pass catching. If Arthur Smith continues to run running backs to the ground like he's historically done, Najee's inefficiency or not, like, he may just get so much volume that he's worth a draft pick now.
No, I agree. And inefficiency doesn't really mean anything in fantasy if you really think about it. Like Joe Mixon is super inefficient. Rashad White, super inefficient. But you're right. The volume is the name of the game. And Arthur Smith, run heavy, zone read type of offense. So, I mean, I'm with you, man. I think Najee definitely. And all I'm saying is that Jaylen Warren is a guy you can draft, but just you can wait a little bit. And because people might be like, oh, he's injured. So I can wait a little bit longer to get him if you really want him on your team.
Is there any updates on how the offensive line has played so far?
I mean, I think I'm not really too sure, to be honest with you. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's not. I don't think that they're getting sacked or anything like they're having plenty of time. It's just that I don't know. This offense just is weird, dude. I don't know what they're trying to do. So yeah, more to come on that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That is a team that if they have some sort of a philosophical or fundamental shift, like, Fields comes in, all of a sudden Fields is super fantasy viable, whether he could throw 100%. The football or not, right? So there are things that could just slightly tweak for that offense that would make massive waves in fantasy world. So definitely something to keep in mind. I will give you my final riser here, Shovit. It is one we started debating off the air, and we were like, let's just get on and record so we can talk about it. It is Rhamondre Stevenson. And Rhamondre Stevenson, I had in my other league last year, incredibly underwhelming. Also a guy that was coming back from an injury. Also a guy that was in a really, really awful offense that, quite frankly, had next to no one. And they're not in much of a different situation this year, to be completely honest with you. But that in itself is also giving me more, giving me a sense of peace with Rhamondre, if that makes sense, where they don't have any other running backs that they brought in that are truly vying for playing time. The preseason has like nobody's really jumped out on page, been like, hey, that running back is kind of electric, or hey, that guy's doing this. Maybe he can make some waves. And again, they have Jacoby Brissett, who is just, a natural backup quarterback that can get the job done. And I do expect at some point Drake May to take the reins and start. And the biggest thing is, while they're figuring out their 7 subpar receivers, who's going to be the guy, Gerard Mayo came out and said, we're going to lean into what we know. And there's only one constant in this entire team. The coach is new. The quarterback is new. I mean, I guess Demario Douglas is still there, but a bunch of Kendrick Bourne too. But like the receivers are shuffling with KJ Osborne, Jalen Polk, they drafted, right? The only constant to that offense is Rhamondre Stevenson. So I think, again, attrition by no subtraction, or I guess attrition by no addition, if that makes sense, where they didn't bring anybody else in to really fight for the job. And Rhamondre already possesses one of the biggest benefits in fantasy football, especially half and full point PPR, is he's a good pass catcher. So I think in a land of who the hell is catching the passes, you at least have one guy that's proven to do it. You have one guy that's proven to be able to run the football. So I think it can only get. Last year felt like such an underwhelming year for Rhamondre, and I thought it could get better, and he was still RB20. So he was a very, very safe floor running back 2 in most, 10, 12 league formats. So if I think he's slightly going to go up there, he's, again, getting drafted around areas where you have running backs like DeAndre Swift, who I want absolutely no part of. Injury concerns. They have like 4 running backs there. They have 3 receivers. Caleb Williams. Like, I don't want any part of DeAndre Swift. Zamir White, who we also talked about. Obviously, he's the workhorse, but there are fears there, which I think we'll touch on a little bit later. Other guys like Nick Chubb, similar ADP, so I'm like a guy who's not going to play for the first 3 or 4 weeks. So I think we're undervaluing Rhamondre Stevenson incredibly in a land where you have split running backs, guys who can only run or only catch, and he can do basically everything. He's just on a very underwhelming and a team that everybody kind of wants to forget about, the Patriots.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, dude, I'm like, it's so hard for me to hit that button on Stevenson in like round 5, to be honest with you. Like, it's just the fact that like last year was just not a good year for him. And maybe there were signs of like, okay, when he came back after being injured, he looked decent, but it's just the uncertainty there. And like, I'm just not sure about this Patriots team as a whole, but I get what you're saying. I get like, he's a pass catching running back. So even if they're down, right, he should get the targets and volume there. Personally, like, I'm like thinking, would I rather have Brian Robinson or Stevenson? Dude, I'm actually leaning Brian Robinson. I feel like, it's like one of those things where, do I want to get him at round 5, or do I want to wait and see if I can roll the dice and get someone else for the upside? But I get what you're saying. I completely understand.
Yeah, just a couple. So Stevenson ended up getting hurt week 14 or midway through his game against the Chargers week 13, right? So last 3 games before he got hurt, he had 18.9 fantasy points, 10.2 fantasy points, and 16 fantasy points. He had 20 carries in one game and 21 carries in the other game. The only other game he only had 9, but 9 carries for 87 yards. But that's not even the biggest thing. 6 targets, 5 targets, 5 targets. 2 games before that, 6 targets, 6 targets, 5 targets. So I just, again, in a year where he was disgusting, that offense sucked, he didn't even really produce well, he still saw so much work that it's also another volume play where also, like, if you surveyed 100 people, the average NFL fans, I don't know that 75% of them could tell me who Rhamondre Stevenson's backup is right now. So
I wouldn't be able to tell you that, to be honest with you. I don't even know.
Exactly. So that
Antonio Gibson, by the way.
They did sign Antonio Gibson. Yeah. Exactly. And he obviously has always been more of a pass catcher, right? So I think his work is only going to stem either on third down, which you may take some away, but running the football has never been his strength, even though we want to give him opportunities in Washington. He just never could do it. So another guy that signed that's pretty underwhelming, I think Rhamondre Stevenson right now for where he's going is undervalued. And I have started drafting him a little bit more as my RB2 or even like a flex play, just because the players that are going around where he's going, there's so much more uncertainty with other players on their team potentially stealing their job that he doesn't have that right now.
Fair. Okay, cool. Well, let's kick it off with my riser. Last one that I have is Jaylen Wright. Jaylen Wright is a guy that when you look in preseason, you see the explosiveness, you see that speed, and he has been looking immaculate, right? And the situation here is that you got Raheem Mostert, you have Achan there as well, but he's looking like he's going to be that third running back, and that's crucial because Raheem Mostert is getting older, right? I think he's in his 30s
He's already
now.
32 or something. Yeah.
Yeah, so the 30s and aging back, it's only a matter of time before something happens, and you want to make sure you get that security handcuff, but you want to make sure you get that security blanket before somebody else does. So with that being said, I think he's just going to rise in terms of ADP because everyone else has the same thought: fast running back in Miami Dolphins. I want to get him, and like I said, preseason looked really good for Jaylen Wright as well. So he looks like the real deal. Will he get playing time? That's something we need to see. But draft him just in case that something does happen to one of these running backs.
Other point there, Mostert's older. Jaylen Wright is just as fast as Devon Achane. Devon Achane's 5'9", 183. Jaylen Wright's 5'10", 210. So he's got 30 pounds of mass with similar speed. So
Right.
Biggest fear for Achane coming out of college, why he dropped to the third round, was his size. He's so small. He's incredibly electric, but he takes one massive hit, he could get hurt. You're almost hedging not only Mostert, but also Devon Achane by getting Jaylen Wright in 15th, 14th round. He's probably going undrafted in some drafts. Definitely worth taking a flyer on because, again, we've seen how crazy Mike McDaniel can be and how unafraid he is to get rookies and young guys involved immediately when they have the electricity that Wright does.
Yeah, I mean, if you get Achane in that third round or second round and you don't get Jaylen Wright, dude, bless your heart. Like, I hope everything works out just the way you want it because that's scary.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I only had 3. I do have a couple of honorable mentions, and one of the honorable mentions is Rome Odunze. Rome Odunze right now is not necessarily fantasy relevant. He's vying for targets even on his own team between a superstar, a star receiver, and a aging really good receiver as well. Now, that aging really good receiver, and I don't know if a lot of this also has to do with me watching Hard Knocks, but they've been giving Keenan Allen a lot of shit about the weight he's gained and about how much slower he's looked. And Rome Odunze looks incredible. Like he looks so fluid. His work ethic is second to none. He doesn't really act like a rookie. He's not like, oh man, like I'm so happy to be here, blah, blah. He's just all about the work. And I have so much respect for players that are young and have $20 million in signing bonuses thrown at them, and all they really care about is the work still. And again, Hard Knocks is a show, right? So it can be edited in a way to make you feel a certain type of way about a player or the team. And I think that's why every time you watch Hard Knocks, you want to root for that team. But man, it's been kind of a boring Hard Knocks, but the guy that continues to stand out to me is Rome Odunze. He just does not act like a rookie. And it's much more Rome Odunze than it is Keenan Allen right now. So I think if the Bears have great aspirations, which I expect them to have with Caleb Williams, even just this year, you want Keenan Allen to be healthy all season, which means you probably don't want to work him to the ground for 17 games. You would much rather use your rookie receiver that almost has very similar skill sets to Keenan Allen, almost got compared to him in pre-draft process. Oh, but wait, he's a little bit taller and a little bit faster. So I think he's going under the radar. I have so much faith in Caleb Williams and this offense. And to be honest, the Bears team as a whole, I'm like, that team stock is continuing to climb absolutely to the moon. The defense is electric. So I just think everything is coming together for them. And the rookie on rookie connection with Hard Knocks, with practice, with preseason seems very effing real. So I am buying in on Rome Odunze. He's an incredible player. We all knew that, but I didn't think he'd be fantasy relevant from day one. But I am finding myself wanting to take him in the 12th, 13th round.
Yeah, I think I'm glad we disagreed on Stevenson because it seems like we're agreeing on everything here right now. But I 100% agree with you, right? Like Keenan Allen is in his last year. He's an aging receiver. They don't want to bring him back next year. You want to make sure that Rome Odunze gets enough reps so he can kind of like be the star or the receiver 2, maybe potentially 1 on this Bears team. So I'm with you, man. Rome Odunze later on. And again, preseason also looked really good for Rome Odunze and Caleb Williams included. So yeah, solid. I would definitely be targeting him on the later rounds. I also have an honorable mention. I think the Broncos offense, dude, like low key with Bo Nix, he's been slinging it out there and he actually looks pretty poised. He looks accurate and there's some strength when he's throwing those balls. And so I think that one of the guys that I'm looking at, as like a potential receiver to go out and get is Courtland Sutton. I think Courtland Sutton could get you some good volume as well. He's just a reliable target and as the wide receiver one. But another guy I'm looking at is Troy Franklin, man. Troy Franklin that they just drafted in the 4th round, right? They have Mims, but you don't draft Troy Franklin if you believe in Mims. So Troy Franklin is a guy that's like later rounds, like maybe even after Odunze, probably doesn't even get drafted, to be honest. But if this Bo Nix hype is real and he's going to be that quarterback of the future, which he looks decent, I'll put some money on it. And I would like to take some shares of Troy Franklin or and Courtland Sutton if I can get my hands on them. So I like where this Broncos team is headed for sure.
So I found a really funny Courtland Sutton stat earlier. It's almost unbelievable. So touchdown leaders last year, Mike Evans led the NFL with 13 receiving touchdowns, tied with Tyreek Hill. CeeDee Lamb had 12. He was second. And then 4 players were tied for third with 10. Jordan Addison, Sam Laporta, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Courtland Sutton.
Dude,
now, here's the funniest part of it.
Targets.
Courtland Sutton and Amon-Ra St. Brown both had 10 touchdown catches last year, right?
Yeah.
Amon-Ra St. Brown finished as wide receiver 3 in half-point scoring fantasy football. Courtland Sutton with 10 touchdowns, 3rd in the NFL. Finished as wide receiver 35. So barely in a 12-man league, that dude is barely sniffing flex potential. Now, again, that's not to shit on you being higher on him this year. I just thought that was an incredibly hilarious. You think a guy catching 10 touchdown passes is automatically like gonna be in most of your fantasy lineups. And man, that dude was wide receiver 35. So just goes to show sometimes chasing touchdowns still ain't it. But,
well, I mean, 35 is interesting, right? 35 means that like if you have a 12-man league, 35 could mean that he is your 3rd receiver. So he's flex. Yeah. And so there were points where he was getting touchdowns like back to back games. Like it was kind of crazy. Yeah. So I don't think you can bank on that again. I think you have to hope, because with Russell Wilson, that team, I mean, it wasn't good last year. But with Bo Nix, there's a little bit more of a hype. But I just feel like it might be better offense than with Russell Wilson, aging quarterback. So yeah, I mean, I think the touchdowns regress, but the volume goes up to kind of make up for that, hopefully.
Yeah, no. I'm with you. Funny, though. It's just crazy, right? You have 2 guys both catching 10 touchdowns and they're 32 spots apart in where they finish. That's ridiculous. That's all I had. I had Zamir White as a faller. I don't understand why he's playing so much in preseason. I know that team is kind of in flux and they don't, I guess, they're trying to create more of a conformed identity with the new coach and everything. And they just decided to name Gardner Minshew their starter. But I haven't been encouraged with how much Zamir White is playing in the preseason. Now, I know like 3 years ago, they played Josh Jacobs and with like 3rd string backups, and everyone's like, what the hell is going on? Why is Josh Jacobs on the field when the quarterback's a backup, the offensive line is a backup, they're all backups. So it's like, why is Zamir White playing? But they've done that with Josh Jacobs, and then he broke the single season rushing record that year that he played in the preseason. So it's weird. And they love Alexander Mattison. Contrary to how all Vikings fans feel about Alexander Mattison, all of the Raiders camp reports I read are Mattison, raving about Mattison. And I'm just like, dude, you will not get me to buy into Alexander Mattison. But again, what is the information that's coming out that we can base any of this off of is what's happening in camp. And for whatever reason, they're raving about Mattison, and Zamir White is playing really, really deep into meaningless preseason games. So take it all with a grain of salt, but it is definitely something to keep your eye on.
Man, I saw a lot of people, fantasy experts saying don't draft Zamir White in the 6th round. And I'm like, I don't know, man. That is one thing, like a run heavy team. Zamir White looks like a freaking truck. And even in preseason, he was getting like good efficiency as well. So this is the one that I'm like, if he's available to me, I will probably still go out and get him. I'm not buying into this Madison hype, to be honest with you.
He's worth the bet just because we all know his backup is bad. Madison is bad. I don't care what they try to sell me. Alexander Mattison is bad at running the football. He's not efficient at all. So, and he can't pass catch. So he really doesn't do much well. All that to say, where I had in my dynasty league, I have Zamir White as my RB1 because I went basically 0 RB. And I felt so much better about it until recently, and now I don't feel as good about it. So it's just something worth monitoring. The hype that I had for White too, and that I was bought in on, it's not quite there as much now. So I don't know. Just take that with a grain of salt. 2 things before I'm done talking, and then if you have anything, you can go.
Yeah.
I'm going to continue to bang this. And it's going to end up making sure that I don't get him in any leagues, but Rashee Rice continues to not be correctly placed. Yeah. He is incorrectly placed. He is incorrectly placed. They think of it could be because of suspension. I quite frankly don't care about the suspension. He could be suspended for 6 games. Where you are drafting him, he's going to be your wide receiver 3, 4 at best. 4 at best where you're drafting him. I don't care if he's suspended half the season. He is their best receiver. Hollywood Brown is already hurt. I don't buy into Xavier Worthy as the wide receiver 1 in day 1. I'm sorry, I don't. I still think Adonai Mitchell is better. So until they prove me wrong, Rashee Rice last year for like the second half of the season was a top 10 wide receiver. He was Patrick Mahomes' go-to player over Travis Kelce. There is no reason he should be being drafted where he's being drafted right now. It makes absolutely no sense. Even if he's suspended, you go out and grab Rashee Rice. I don't know how hard and how much I can bang this drum. You just have to get Rashee Rice. It makes no sense that he's being drafted where he's being drafted.
Yeah, I have him on my list of risers here that I made like Tuesday, and I don't think he's going to get suspended. That was like the main thing, right? Like the suspension, 4 days or whatever it's looking like. Like, I don't think they care that, just so basically the NFL is saying run away if you get in a car accident or whatever.
Yeah,
right?
Like literally, as long as you're not there, as long as you walk away.
Don't do drugs. If you do get caught with something, run away. And so I don't think he's going to get suspended. So he should be the first receiver that you target on this, Patrick Mahomes led Chiefs offense. So I'm with you on Rashee Rice as well.
And we've been waiting for years after Tyreek Hill to be like, who's the receiver that's going to be the guy? Who's going to be the guy this year? It wasn't. He just kept spreading the ball around. Kelce and everybody else. And finally, we have a guy that became the guy, and everybody wants to shy away and be like, oh, what about Hollywood Brown, who gets hurt every year? What about Xavier Worthy, who weighs $150? Like, I'm sorry, dude. It's not going to be either of those guys. It is going to be Rashee Rice. I would be drafting Rashee Rice like 4 rounds earlier than he's getting drafted right now, personally. So like, it is a massive discrepancy in the market. If he gets suspended, I still don't care. I still think he is a league winner second half of the season because he is the wide receiver 1 for the best quarterback in football. So that is my ending rant. Do you have any final words before we end this thing?
No, I mean, that's pretty much it. This is fun. I mean, and I'm just looking forward to getting all those players that you just mentioned.
Yeah, dude, we are less than 2 weeks away from drafting. I just get sniped with every single player by you. God, that'd be horrible.
Rashee Rice, second round,
first round. Boom, there he is. Told you, sweetheart. I listened to you, man. I'm just like, all right, bro. Oh. Yeah, so drafts are less than 2 weeks away. The NFL season is less than 2 weeks away. Get excited. We are back for good. Weekly episodes, maybe sometimes twice a week, depending on how crazy we get. I am Sweetcard. That is Shovit. We are the only playbook. Thank you guys for tuning in to another episode. The usual, like, subscribe, comment, do all the good stuff. Spread the word. Hope you guys have a fantastic weekend. See you.